His laugh echoed through that courtroom like a knife twisting in my chest. Brendan actually laughed. Right there, in front of the judge, in front of everyone. My husband of 8 years threw his head back and laughed at me. His lawyer had just finished explaining why I was an unfit mother. The judge had just granted him temporary full custody of our 2 children. And Brendan Holloway, the man I had given everything to, leaned over to me and whispered that I would be lucky to see my kids twice a month with supervision. Like I was some kind of criminal, like I was dangerous. The mother who had rocked those babies to sleep every single night, who had memorized every food allergy and every nightmare and every favorite bedtime story. That mother was now being treated like a threat. And my husband laughed. I am Azalea Salinas. I was 34 years old when my entire world collapsed in a California courtroom. 34 years old, married for 8 years, mother to Marisol, who was 7, and Theo, who was almost 6, with his birthday coming up in just 2 months. 34 years old, and suddenly I had nothing. No home, no children, no savings. Nothing except the clothes I was wearing and a used Toyota that made sounds like it was auditioning for a horror movie soundtrack every time I turned the ignition. My mechanic once told me the car was not broken, it was just expressing itself. I could not afford a second opinion. Let me tell you how I got there. And more importantly, let me tell you what happened next. I met Brendan when I was 25. He was charming, ambitious, climbing fast at a tech company in San Diego. I was working as a medical billing specialist at a hospital. Good, steady work that I was proud of. My parents were immigrants who taught me that hard work and honesty were the only things you needed in America. Keep your head down, do your job, treat people right, and everything will work out. I believe that. I really believe that. Brendan swept me off my feet. Fancy dinners, weekend trips. He told me I was beautiful, that I was the woman he had been searching for his whole life. We got married when I was 26, and Marisol came along a year later. Theo followed 2 years after that. Life was good. Life was exactly what I had dreamed it would be. When the kids were little, Brendan suggested I reduce my hours at work. Just go part-time, he said. For the family. The kids need you home more. I can provide for us. And because I trusted him completely, because I thought we were building something together, I agreed. I went part-time. I managed the household. I raised our children. I supported his career while he climbed higher and higher. What I did not know was that Brendan had been planning to leave me since before Theo was even born. He gave me an allowance, like a teenager. Every month, a set amount would appear in my personal account, and that was supposed to cover groceries, kids' activities, my gas, everything. If I needed more, I had to ask. I had to explain. And I never questioned it because I trusted my husband. My parents had a traditional marriage where my father handled the money, and I thought that was just how things worked. I was a fool, a complete and total fool. If I could go back and talk to that younger version of myself, I would shake her by the shoulders. But hindsight is 20/20, and foresight is apparently legally blind. The divorce papers arrived at my workplace, not at home, where I might have had privacy, not through the mail, where I could have processed it alone. No, a process server walked into the hospital billing department and called out my name in front of everyone. My coworkers watched as I was handed documents that destroyed my life. Brendan did that deliberately. Maximum humiliation. That should have told me everything I needed to know about who he really was. But it got worse, so much worse. His lawyer painted me as mentally unstable, neglectful, overwhelmed and incapable of caring for my own children. Every small moment of exhaustion that every mother experiences was twisted into evidence of incompetence. That time, Marisol fell off her bike while I was distracted with Theo. That time, I forgot to sign a permission slip. That time, I cried at a school event because I was going through a hard week. All of it documented. All of it saved. Brendan had been building a case against me for 18 months while I was busy loving him and raising his children. And he was not working alone. His mother, Constance Holloway, had been helping him the entire time. That woman had smiled at me across holiday dinner tables while secretly documenting every mistake I made. She had offered to babysit so she could take notes on how the children behaved with me versus without me. She had been photographing my messy kitchen, my unfolded laundry, my tired face, building a file, building a weapon, Constance was the kind of woman who could find fault with a sunrise. Too orange, too slow, not enough vitamin D. But the betrayal that broke me the most did not come from Constance Holloway. It came from my own blood. My sister Paloma testified against me. My baby sister, who I had protected our entire childhood. My sister, who I had loaned money to, who I had let cry on my shoulder through 3 bad breakups, who I had considered my best friend. Paloma sat in that witness chair and told the court that I was always overwhelmed, that I was short-tempered with the kids, that she worried about my mental state. She said those words while looking at the floor, refusing to meet my eyes, and I felt something inside me shatter. I found out later that Paloma had been dating one of Brendan's colleagues. She wanted to stay in their good graces. She sold me out for a man and some dinner reservations at nice restaurants. My lawyer was court-appointed because I could not afford anything else. Brendan's lawyer wore a watch that probably cost more than my car, and considering my car's primary feature was sounding like it was being murdered every time I started it, that was not exactly a high bar. My lawyer was overworked, underprepared, and clearly outmatched. She did her best, but her best was not enough. The temporary custody order gave Brendan everything. The children would stay in the family home because it was the stable environment. The $600,000 oceanside house that I had helped pay for, that I had decorated and cleaned and filled with love. That house was now his. I was ordered to find alternative housing and could petition for visitation rights once I was settled. I moved into a studio apartment so small that I had to go outside to change my mind. The real estate listing probably called it cozy and efficient. Real estate agents could make a prison cell sound like a spa retreat. 1 room, 1 window, a bathroom where the shower was directly above the toilet because there was not enough space for them to be separate. This was my life now. This was what 8 years of marriage and devotion had earned me. But something happened during that terrible court hearing, something I almost missed because I was so destroyed by everything else happening around me. It was just a moment, a flicker. Brendan handed a folder to his lawyer, and the lawyer quickly slipped it into his briefcase with a glance around the room, like he was checking to see if anyone noticed. And when the financial disclosure documents were presented, something about the numbers felt wrong. Brendan's income was listed at $140,000 per year, but I remembered conversations. I remembered him bragging about bonuses and stock options. I remembered a lifestyle that did not match those numbers. At the time, I was too broken to think clearly about it, but that seed was planted. That tiny suspicion lodged itself in my brain and waited. Before we continue, if you are enjoying this story, please subscribe and tell me in the comments where you are watching from and what time it is there. I see every single comment, and they mean the world to me. Thank you so much for your support. The weeks after that court hearing were the darkest of my entire life. Brendan used the custody arrangement like a weapon. Every single visitation became a battle. I would drive 45 minutes to pick up the kids, and when I arrived, Brendan would meet me at the door with an apologetic shrug. "Sorry," he would say. Marisol woke up with a stomach ache. "Better if she stays home today." Or Theo has a play date that just came up. Maybe next weekend. Next weekend, always next weekend. And when next weekend came, there was always another excuse. The few times I did get to see my children, something had changed in them. Marisol, my bright and chatty little girl, was quiet and distant. She would answer my questions with one-word responses and spend most of our time together staring at her tablet. Theo was worse. My baby boy would cry and cling to me, asking why Mommy left them, why Mommy did not want to live with them anymore. "Who told you that, baby?" I would ask, but I already knew the answer. Brendan was poisoning my children against me. Every night in that house, he was filling their heads with lies. Mommy chose to leave. Mommy does not want you. Mommy is sick and cannot take care of you properly. He was erasing me from their lives one bedtime story at a time. And Constance Holloway made sure everyone knew about it. That woman treated social media like her personal victory parade. Every other day there was a new post, photos of her with my children at the zoo, at the beach, at restaurants. Hashtag Grandma of the Year, hashtag Blessed, hashtag Family First. She had moved into my house to help Brendan, which really meant she had moved in to finish erasing me. I wondered if she was also teaching my children that passive aggression was a love language, She sent me a private message about a month after the court hearing. Just a few sentences that I will never forget. She wrote that I was never good enough for her son, that everyone could see it except me, that my children deserved better than a mother like me. I stared at those words on my phone screen for an hour, reading them over and over, wondering if maybe she was right. Meanwhile, Paloma had fully joined the Holloway family. She showed up in Constance's social media posts, smiling in my kitchen, playing with my children in my backyard. She was given gifts, a new car. Her credit card debt mysteriously paid off. Our mother was caught in the middle, heartbroken, not understanding how her two daughters had ended up on opposite sides of a war. The financial situation was strangling me. Brendan's lawyer filed motion after motion to delay spousal support payments, temporary orders, continuances, requests for additional documentation. Every legal trick in the book to keep money out of my hands while I drowned. I was working double shifts at the hospital just to cover rent and food. I stopped eating breakfast and lunch to save money. I kept telling myself it was intermittent fasting for my health, but really it was intermittent fasting because my wallet was on life support. I sold my grandmother's gold bracelet, the one piece of jewelry that meant anything to me, just to make rent 1 month. Then I discovered that Brendan had opened credit cards in my name during our marriage, cards I never knew existed, and he had maxed them out and stopped making payments. My credit score was destroyed. I could not get approved for a better apartment or a car loan or anything. He had not just taken my present, he had sabotaged my future. Work became another battlefield. A new supervisor appeared in my department about 2 months after the divorce. Her name was Regina Doyle, and from day one, she treated me like something she'd stepped in. My schedule was changed without notice. I was written up for being 3 minutes late after working a 12-hour shift. My hours were cut from part-time to barely surviving. I thought it was just bad luck until a coworker mentioned seeing Regina at a charity event, standing with Constance Holloway, laughing together like old friends. There are no coincidences. Brendan's reach extended into every corner of my life. I was starting to think he had some kind of evil villain checklist and was just working through it one item at a time. The absolute lowest point came on a Saturday in March, Theo's 6th birthday. I had begged for visitation that day. Begged. I offered to come early or stay late, to do whatever Brendan wanted. Just please let me see my son on his birthday. Brendan's lawyer sent a formal response declining due to scheduling conflicts with the planned celebration. So I did something I am not proud of. I drove to the house, my house, the house where I had brought both my babies home from the hospital. I parked across the street and just watched. Through the windows, I could see balloons and streamers. I could see children running around in party hats. I could see Constance carrying a massive birthday cake toward the dining room. And I could see my son, my Theo, surrounded by people celebrating without me. I sat in my car eating gas station snacks for dinner while watching my son's birthday party through a window like some kind of suburban ghost. The kind of crying where you cannot breathe and your whole body shakes. The kind of crying that comes from a place so deep you did not even know it existed. And then Brendan spotted me. He came outside with his phone already in his hand, already dialing. The police arrived 20 minutes later. The officer was apologetic but firm. I was not doing anything illegal by parking on a public street, but Brendan had claimed I was stalking and harassing his family. The officer suggested I leave before things escalated, so I left. I drove back to my studio apartment with its view of a brick wall, and I wondered if this was going to be the rest of my life. The following week, Brendan's lawyer filed for a restraining order against me, a restraining order, against a mother who just wanted to see her children on her son's birthday. The paperwork described me as erratic, unstable, and potentially dangerous. It requested that I be prohibited from coming within 500 feet of the family home, the children's school, and Brendan's workplace. I was going to lose everything, not just my house and my money, but any chance of ever being a real mother to my children again. Brendan was going to win completely, and there was nothing I could do about it, or so I thought. That weekend, I went to my mother's house for dinner. She had been trying to stay neutral between me and Paloma, but I could see the pain in her eyes, her two daughters torn apart, her grandchildren kept from her because she refused to take sides. After dinner, she mentioned that she had been cleaning out the garage. She had found some boxes of old things, stuff I had stored there years ago when Brendan and I moved into our house and did not have enough closet space. She asked if I wanted to take them or if she should donate everything. I was not in the mood to sort through old memories, but something made me say yes. I loaded 3 dusty boxes into my Toyota and brought them back to my tiny apartment. That night, I opened them expecting to find old clothes, maybe some books, forgotten wedding gifts. What I found instead was a plain black external hard drive. I'd completely forgotten about it. Back in the early years of our marriage, when Theo was just a baby, I used to help Brendan with his home office work, filing things, organizing receipts, sometimes backing up his computer when he was too busy. I had copied a bunch of his files onto this drive as a backup, and then life got hectic and I stuck it in a box and never thought about it again. I almost threw it away without looking. Almost. But something made me plug it into my laptop, and what I found changed everything. The hard drive contained thousands of files going back 6 years. Spreadsheets, emails, bank statements, legal documents. At first, I did not understand what I was looking at. The numbers were confusing, the language full of business terms I barely recognized. But the more I dug, the clearer the picture became. Brendan had a secret. 6 years ago, right around the time Theo was born, my husband had formed a limited liability company, an LLC with a boring, generic name that meant nothing to me. But according to these files, that LLC had been receiving substantial payments every single month. Consulting fees, the invoices said, transferred from his employer. But these payments never appeared in our joint accounts. They never showed up on the tax returns I signed. They went somewhere else entirely. I am not a financial expert. Numbers have never been my strength. I once balanced my checkbook wrong and accidentally convinced myself I was rich for about 3 glorious hours before reality came crashing back. But even I could see that something was very wrong. I spent the entire night going through files, taking notes, trying to understand the scope of what Brendan had hidden. By morning, I had a rough estimate. Over 6 years, Brendan had funneled at least $850,000 through that LLC. $850,000 that I never knew existed. $850,000 that was never disclosed in our divorce proceedings. But that was not even the worst part. I found emails. Conversations between Brendan and his lawyer that went back years before he served me with divorce papers. In one email, his lawyer explicitly discussed how to keep the LLC invisible during the eventual divorce. Those words, the eventual divorce. Brendan had been planning to leave me while I was still nursing his son, while I was waking up at 3 in the morning for feedings, while I was surviving on no sleep and cold coffee. My husband was plotting how to hide money from me. This was not just a man who fell out of love and wanted to move on. This was calculated, premeditated financial fraud. I needed help, professional help, but I could barely afford groceries, let alone forensic accountants and lawyers. I was ready to give up, to accept that knowing the truth was not the same as being able to use it, when I remembered someone at work. Her name was Beverly Okonkwo. She worked in a different department now, but years ago she had been some kind of financial investigator. I had heard rumors that she left that career after burnout, that she had seen too much corporate ugliness and needed a change. We were not close friends, but she had always been kind to me. She was one of the few coworkers who had not treated me differently after my very public divorce. I asked if I could buy her coffee. She said yes. We sat in a corner booth at a diner near the hospital, and I told her everything. The divorce, the custody battle, the hidden hard drive. I showed her some of the files on my phone, just screenshots of the spreadsheets and emails. I expected her to tell me it was complicated, that she was not sure what it meant, that I should probably consult a professional. Instead, Beverly looked at those files and let out a low whistle. She set down her coffee cup and stared at me for a long moment. She said she had not seen books this cooked since her cousin tried to do her own taxes after 3 glasses of wine. Then she got serious and told me this was not just hidden assets. This was fraud. Beverly spent the next 2 weeks helping me understand what Brendan had done. She worked after hours using skills she thought she had left behind, tracing the money through various accounts. And what she found was even worse than I had imagined. The LLC owned property, a vacation condo in Lake Tahoe that I had never heard of, never seen, never knew existed, worth approximately $400,000. While I was selling my grandmother's jewelry to make rent, my husband was sitting on a secret vacation home. 4 bedrooms, lake view, hot tub on the deck. The audacity of it made my blood boil. But there was more. The LLC had been making monthly payments to Constance Holloway, listed as consulting fees for administrative services, $72,000 over 4 years. Constance Holloway, who had never done administrative work in her life. Constance Holloway, who spent her days posting on social media and shopping, and apparently committing tax fraud. These payments were clearly fake, designed to move money to his mother while creating fraudulent tax deductions. That was not just hiding assets from a spouse, that was tax fraud involving his entire family. My personal approach to money changed permanently after discovering all this. I realized that no matter how much you trust someone, you should always understand your own finances. Now I keep emergency savings in my own name only, money that I control completely. Trust is beautiful, but verification is survival. Beverly connected me with a former colleague of hers, a forensic accountant named Harrison Wells. Harrison took one look at the evidence and agreed to work with me on a delayed payment basis. He said cases like this were exactly why he got into the field. Then Harrison connected me with a family law attorney named Diana Prescott, who specialized in divorce fraud cases. She worked on contingency for situations exactly like mine. Diana was a small woman with sharp eyes and absolutely no patience for nonsense. She reminded me of a terrier, small but absolutely unwilling to let go once she had something in her teeth. She reviewed everything Beverly and Harrison had found, asked about 50 questions, and then sat back in her chair with what I can only describe as a predatory smile. She told me that this evidence was not just enough to reopen my case. It was enough to destroy Brendan completely. But then she said something that surprised me. She said we could not just go to court with this. We needed to be strategic. We needed Brendan to feel safe, to feel confident, to feel like he had already won. We needed him to lie under oath about assets he thought no one knew existed. We needed him to commit perjury. We needed to set a trap. For the first time in months, I felt something other than despair. I felt the tiniest flicker of hope, and underneath that hope, something else was growing. Something that had been buried under all that grief and humiliation. I was getting angry. While Harrison continued his forensic work, he discovered something else in the financial records. Credit card statements showing purchases that made no sense for Brendan's supposed lifestyle. Expensive jewelry I had never received. Hotel bookings in San Francisco on weekends he claimed to be at conferences. Monthly payments going to an individual account belonging to a woman named Kendra Whitmore. Harrison traced Kendra Whitmore. He found her social media profile, carefully set to private, but with one public photo visible, a pregnancy announcement, 7 months along, posted just 3 weeks ago. Brendan had a girlfriend, had probably been with her for at least 2 years based on the payment records, and she was pregnant with his child. My husband had sat in that courtroom and painted me as an unfit mother, while his mistress was carrying his baby. He had claimed I was unstable while building an entirely separate secret life. He had laughed at me while betraying me in ways I was only beginning to understand. The woman I was 8 months ago would have collapsed at this news. The woman I was becoming just added it to the file. Just another piece of ammunition. Just another nail in his coffin. Diana Prescott laid out the plan. We would file a motion to modify custody and a separate motion to set aside the original divorce judgment based on fraud. But we would make our initial filing look weak, routine, easily defeated. We would let Brendan think I was making one last desperate attempt before giving up forever. And then we would spring the trap. Diana Prescott was a master strategist. She explained that Brendan's greatest weakness was his arrogance. He believed he was the smartest person in every room. He believed he had covered his tracks perfectly. He believed I was too beaten down and too stupid to ever fight back. We were going to use that arrogance against him. The first step was making our legal filings look pathetic. Diana drafted a motion to modify custody that focused on emotional arguments rather than evidence. She wrote about how much I missed my children, how the current arrangement was causing psychological harm, how I deserved a second chance. It read like a desperate plea from a woman who had nothing left to offer except feelings. Exactly what we wanted Brendan to see. The second step was harder. I had to act defeated. Diana coached me on what to say if I ran into anyone connected to Brendan. I was thinking about moving back to Texas to be closer to extended family. I would mention casually. Maybe it was time to accept that California held too many painful memories. I let this information slip to my mother, knowing she would mention it to Paloma, knowing Paloma would run straight to Brendan. I practiced my defeated expression in the bathroom mirror so many times that my reflection started looking genuinely concerned for me. Method acting at its finest. The trap was set. All I had to do was look like a woman who had given up. Meanwhile, I had a smaller battle to fight. Regina Doyle had been making my work life miserable for months. Every shift was a new humiliation. But now I understood that nothing in my life was coincidence anymore. I started documenting everything. Every schedule change made without proper notice. Every write-up for minor issues that other employees got away with daily. Every time she singled me out in front of colleagues, I built a file. Just like Brendan had built a file on me, except mine was based on truth. Then I filed a formal complaint with Human Resources. I included evidence of Regina's connection to Constance Holloway, social media photos of them together at charity events, a screenshot of Constance, thanking Regina for being such a wonderful friend during difficult family times. The implication was clear. Regina was not just a bad supervisor. She was participating in a coordinated harassment campaign. HR took it seriously, very seriously. Within 2 weeks, Regina Doyle was quietly transferred to a different department across town. My hours were restored. My schedule stabilized. It was a small victory, but it taught me something important. I was capable of fighting back. I was capable of winning. Regina probably thought she was untouchable because of her fancy friends. Turns out fancy friends do not mean much when you leave a paper trail of workplace violations a mile long. The restraining order hearing came next. Brendan's lawyer presented me as an unstable woman who had stalked her own family on a child's birthday. Diana presented evidence that Brendan had been systematically denying my legal visitation rights for months, that his claims of harassment were actually attempts to control and punish me for seeking access to my own children. The judge reviewed the evidence and dismissed the restraining order petition. Brendan looked annoyed, but not worried. He still thought he was winning the war. Then came the deposition. For those who do not know, a deposition is when lawyers ask questions under oath before a trial. Everything you say is recorded and can be used against you later. Diana scheduled Brendan's deposition as part of our custody modification motion. She told him it was routine, just standard procedure for any custody case. Brendan arrived at that deposition with his expensive lawyer and his expensive suit, and his absolute confidence that he had already won. His lawyer was probably billing $500 an hour to basically sit there and look expensive. Nice work, if you can get it. Diana asked gentle questions, easy questions. She asked about his income, his assets, his financial situation. She asked if he owned any businesses or had any business interests outside his primary employment. No, Brendan said. Just my salary and standard benefits. She asked if he owned any property other than the family home. No, Brendan said. Just the Oceanside house. She asked if he had any financial relationships with family members, any payments or transfers to relatives. No, Brendan said. Nothing like that. Every single answer was a lie. Every single answer was perjury. And every single answer was recorded and documented and certified. Brendan's lawyer looked bored throughout the entire deposition. He had not prepared because he did not think he needed to. He did not know about the hard drive. He did not know about Beverly and Harrison. He did not know that his client had just destroyed himself under oath. After the deposition, Diana and I reviewed the recording together. She had this look on her face like a cat who had just cornered a very fat mouse. She told me we had him. Completely and totally. Now we just needed to prepare for the final battle. But there was one more thing I needed to do first. Something personal. If this story is resonating with you, I would be so grateful if you would hit that subscribe button. Your support keeps me going and means more than you will ever know. I went to see Paloma, not at her apartment where she might refuse to open the door. I found her at a coffee shop she frequented, a place we used to go together back when we were actually sisters. She looked up from her phone and saw me standing there, and her face went through about 15 different emotions in 2 seconds. I sat down across from her without asking permission. I took out my phone, and I showed her the emails. The emails where Brendan and his colleague discussed how to leverage her. The emails where they called her a useful idiot. Those exact words, useful idiot. The emails where they laughed about how easy she was to manipulate. The emails where her boyfriend promised to dump her once he got his promotion and she was no longer needed. Paloma read those emails and started to cry. Not delicate tears, ugly, messy, snot running down her face, crying. She kept saying she was sorry over and over, but I did not want her apologies. I wanted her to understand what she had done. I told her that she had testified against her own sister for a man who was using her. I told her that she had helped take children away from their mother for dinner reservations and a leased car. I told her that our grandmother would be ashamed of her, and I watched that hit her like a physical blow. Then I told her she had a choice. She could continue down the path she had chosen, living with the Holloways and pretending everything was fine. Or she could tell the truth. She could sign an affidavit admitting that she was coached, that she was pressured, that she was promised rewards for her testimony. She could try to make things right. Paloma chose the truth. 2 days later, I had her sworn affidavit describing exactly how Brendan and his lawyer had prepared her testimony, what they told her to say, what they told her to emphasize, how they promised her boyfriend would stay with her if she cooperated. It was devastating evidence of witness tampering, and it was going to blow their case apart. The week before the hearing, Diana and I did final preparations. We had the forensic accounting report documenting every hidden dollar. We had the property records for the Lake Tahoe condo. We had bank statements showing payments to Constance. We had evidence of the affair with Kendra Whitmore and her pregnancy. We had proof that Brendan had committed perjury in his deposition. We had Paloma's affidavit about being coached. We had everything we needed. The night before the hearing, I could not sleep. I stood at the window of my tiny studio apartment, looking out at the brick wall that had been my view for 8 months, and I thought about everything that had led to this moment. The girl who trusted too easily, the wife who never questioned, the mother who lost everything. I was not that woman anymore. I had been broken, yes, but I had rebuilt myself into something stronger. Tomorrow, Brendan Holloway was going to learn what happens when you underestimate someone you tried to destroy. The courtroom felt different now. The last time I'd been here, I was a broken woman watching her life collapse. Today, I was something else entirely. Brendan arrived with his lawyer carrying a thin folder. They hadn't prepared for anything except an easy victory. Constance Holloway sat behind them, wearing pearls and a satisfied smile. Then I walked in with Diana Prescott carrying 3 thick folders and a banker's box. Behind us, Harrison Wells with his forensic accounting report. Brendan's smirk flickered when he noticed the folders. Diana's opening was brief. Evidence of fraud in the original divorce proceedings. Deliberately falsified financial disclosures. Grounds to set aside the judgment and reconsider custody. Harrison Wells testified first. He traced Brendan's hidden LLC, the monthly transfers disguised as consulting fees, total concealed from marital assets, $862,000. But he wasn't finished. Property records for a Lake Tahoe condo, 4 bedrooms, Lakeview, purchased through the LLC for $380,000. A vacation home hidden throughout our entire marriage and divorce. Then the payments to Constance. $72,000 for administrative services, never performed. Tax fraud implicating both of them. Diana played the recording of Brendan's deposition. His own voice. Do you own any businesses outside your primary employment? No. Any property other than the family home? No. Any financial relationships with family members? No. Lie after lie in his own words. Brendan's lawyer requested a recess. He was furious. He'd walked into what he thought was an easy case and discovered his client had committed multiple felonies and lied to him about it. Next, Diana presented evidence about Kendra Whitmore. Credit card statements showing jewelry, hotel stays, romantic dinners. monthly payments totaling $60,000 over 2 years, and the pregnancy announcement, 7 months pregnant. Conceived while Brendan was still married to me and fighting for custody. Brendan started shouting that his personal life wasn't relevant. The judge warned him to control himself. Then Diana called Paloma Salinas, my sister. She testified that Brendan and his lawyer had coached her before the original custody hearing. They told her to emphasize any time I seemed tired or stressed, to characterize normal parenting as concerning behavior. They promised her boyfriend a promotion if she cooperated. She looked at me and said she was deeply sorry for what she had done. Constance couldn't stay quiet. She stood and shouted at Paloma, "Traitor, liar." The judge warned her. She ignored him. When Diana presented the tax fraud evidence implicating Constance directly, she completely lost control. She tried to approach the bench, screaming that I had fabricated everything. The judge ordered the bailiff to remove her. Constance Holloway was escorted out, still shouting. Her careful public image shattered. I watched her go and felt nothing. She had become irrelevant. Diana delivered her closing. Fraud, perjury, hidden assets, witness tampering, parental alienation. She requested the original judgment be set aside, custody transferred to me, the family home awarded as compensation, and the matter referred to the district attorney for criminal investigation. The judge said she had seen enough. She called for a 1-hour recess to review the evidence and prepare her ruling. Brendan's lawyer was already on his phone as he walked out, probably calling his malpractice insurance carrier to warn them that a very bad day was about to get worse. Brendan sat alone at the defendant's table, staring straight ahead at nothing, looking like a man watching his entire life collapse in real time. The man who had laughed at me in the same courtroom 8 months ago could not even lift his head. 1 hour later, the judge returned with her ruling. She began by stating that in her 22 years on the bench, she had rarely seen such egregious misconduct by a party in a divorce proceeding. She said the evidence of fraud was overwhelming and incontrovertible. She said the perjury committed during the deposition was a serious criminal matter that would be referred to the district attorney's office for prosecution. Then she delivered the judgment. Custody of both minor children, Marisol and Theo, was immediately and fully transferred to me. Physical custody, legal custody, everything. Brendan would receive supervised visitation twice per month, pending investigation of the parental alienation allegations. The same arrangement he had tried to force on me, the same humiliation he had wanted me to suffer. The family home in Oceanside was awarded to me. The judge found that the house had been paid for with marital income that Brendan had fraudulently concealed, and therefore I was entitled to it as restitution for the fraud. The house I had decorated, the house I had cleaned, the house I had filled with love and lost. It was mine again. A full forensic accounting was ordered of all assets connected to Brendan's LLC, the Lake Tahoe property, and any other hidden accounts. Preliminary estimates suggested I would receive at least 70% of all discovered assets, plus damages for the fraud itself. Brendan was ordered to pay all of my legal fees and forensic accounting costs. Every dollar I had spent fighting for my children would come out of his pocket. Every hour Diana had worked, every calculation Harrison had made, every document Beverly had analyzed. He would pay for all of it. Child support was recalculated based on his actual income, not the fake numbers he had disclosed. The monthly amount was nearly triple what he had originally been ordered to pay. And finally, the matter was being referred to both the district attorney for criminal perjury charges and to the State Bar Association for investigation of his attorney's potential involvement in concealing fraud. Brendan sat completely still as the judge read each item. His face had gone from white to gray to something that did not have a color. His expensive suit suddenly looked too big for him, like he had shrunk inside it. His lawyer was already packing his briefcase, not even pretending to be part of the case anymore. When the judge finished, she looked directly at Brendan. She told him that she hoped he understood the consequences of his choices, that he had not just committed financial crimes, but had attempted to destroy the relationship between his children and their mother. That, in her experience, people who behaved as he had rarely found happiness because they carried their dishonesty with them wherever they went. Then she adjourned the hearing. I stood up on legs that felt like they belonged to someone else. Diana shook my hand and told me we had won. Harrison Wells nodded at me with professional satisfaction, but I could barely process any of it. 8 months of fighting, 8 months of surviving on nothing, 8 months of crying alone in a studio apartment with a view of a brick wall, and now it was over. As I walked toward the door, Brendan finally spoke. He asked if we could work something out. His voice was small, nothing like the confident man who had laughed at me in this same courtroom 8 months ago. He said he was sure we could find a reasonable compromise. He said he would give me whatever I wanted if we could just keep this out of criminal court. I did not answer him. I did not even look at him. I just kept walking. My children were waiting in the hallway with my mother. The court had arranged for them to be brought from school so they could go home with me immediately. Marisol saw me first. She stood frozen for a moment, uncertain, and I realized how much damage Brendan's lies had done. 8 months of being told that Mommy left them. 8 months of being taught to doubt me. But then Theo spotted me and broke into a run, slamming into my legs with enough force to nearly knock me over. "Mommy," he said, "are we going home with you?" "Yes, baby," I told him. "We are going home." Marisol walked over slowly, still cautious. But when I knelt down and opened my arms, she came to me. She buried her face in my shoulder and whispered that she knew I had not left them. She knew Daddy was lying. She had known the whole time, but she did not know how to say it. I held both my children in that courthouse hallway and let myself cry for the first time since this nightmare began. But these were different tears. These were not tears of despair. These were tears of relief, of victory, of a mother who had fought through everything to get her children back. Everything unraveled quickly after that. Kendra Whitmore left Brendan within a week of the hearing when she realized the money was gone and criminal charges were coming. Apparently, love only lasts as long as the credit card works. Constance Holloway received her own letter from the IRS about the fraudulent consulting payments. Last I heard, she deleted all her social media accounts. No more #blessed for her. Brendan's lawyer withdrew from the case and faced his own bar investigation for potentially helping conceal the fraud. And Brendan himself? Last I heard, he updated his dating profile to say he was going through some life changes, which I suppose is technically accurate if you count potential prison time and losing everything you ever had as life changes. 3 weeks after the hearing, I stood in the doorway of my home, the home I had lost and won back. I watched my children playing in the backyard, the same yard where I had taught Marisol to ride a bike, the same yard where I had pushed Theo on his swing for hours. My mother was in the kitchen making dinner. Paloma was there too, tentatively rebuilding what she had broken. We were not okay yet, my sister and me. The trust she had destroyed would take years to rebuild, if it ever could be rebuilt completely. But we were trying. Family is complicated. Forgiveness is harder. But we were taking it one day at a time. The sun was setting over Oceanside, painting everything gold and pink. I thought about the woman I had been a year ago, the woman who trusted blindly and questioned nothing.